over to our next speaker. And in this case, she is a newcomer. I don't want to fuck the noun up though, so I'll just go for they is a newcomer and in the scene, but not a beginner when it comes to deep studies and knowledge. It's Katie Paxton-Fear inside a PhD, which I think she started doing bounties back in 2019 and been really smashing it over for the community with amazing content coming up for beginners and people that are just getting into the scene. So without further ado, I'm just going to do a little bit of explanation what the talk is about, because you need to do a little presentation on that as well. So this is what it says. Katie is a PhD student in machine learning and cybersec. During her free time, she's a top-notch bug bounty hunter and cybersecurity YouTuber. Her talk is about something that we all struggle with. And here it is. Choosing a target and staying motivated. Welcome, Katie.
Wow, thanks for the introduction. I prefer occasional bug bounty hunter. I did start in 2019. Hopefully. Okay, cool. Can you see my slides?
Absolutely.
Very good. Oh, great, because I don't know anything about how computers work. So, my talk is called Sticking With It, How to Choose a Target and Stay Motivated. If you follow me on Twitter, you might notice these slides are ever so slightly different. And that's because I watched the previous talk and I was like, my slides have like zero branding. So very quickly added some quality branding. So you can't say you haven't learned anything. So, right, let's talk about me. If you don't know who I am, my name is Katie. I'm called Inside a PhD on like Twitter and YouTube, but you can just call me Katie. It's shockingly enough my name. I'm a PhD student doing machine learning and cybersecurity. So that's my day job. I'm also a bug bounty hunter. I call myself an occasional bug bounty hunter. Doing a PhD is quite intense of a job to do. So I don't have the kind of dedication that I can do if I was working like a normal 9 to 5. But I'm also a YouTuber, and the videos I make are all about how to get started in specifically bug bounty hunting. You see a lot on YouTube, like OSCP stuff and like how to get certs and how to do kind of pen testing stuff. But there's very little content that's about bug hunting in particular. And I kind of noticed once you kind of get like, you start off, oh, I learned how to use Burp, install it, get it working. The knowledge sort of drops off there until you get to like DEF CON talks, and it's like, here's how I did like 3 million different things and how you really can't do that. So I wanted to kind of give something in there for beginners who really just want to find their first bug. Shockingly enough, my like main series is called Finding Your First Bug, quality branding. So if you want to check out my videos, they're a mixture between, you know, specific bugs like how to find idols or XSS, or now I'm doing more advanced videos like blind XSS, but also about kind of what you might think as professional skills that are specifically unique to people who want to do bug bounty rather than like offensive security stuff. So I'm really self-taught in security. I have a bachelor's in computer science. My previous experience was a data scientist. I can make some lovely graphs, but I didn't really know before I got into security of June last year how to find bugs. So I should say, hold my hands up, I don't have any formal education. I was a developer first. So that's a bit about me, and I hope I've convinced you that I'm worth listening to. But if I haven't, then there's the rest of the talk to go. So just hold on there. So let's talk about this talk. This is the crux of my talk. It's really easy in bug bounty to choose a program. And then when you finally do choose a program, you kind of get a bit seduced, right? You're like sitting there being like, have I found a bug in this? And I've been trying for at least 10 minutes. And then you just look at the next program, you're like, and then you jump ship. And bug hunting, shockingly enough, takes a long time. You won't find a bug in 10 minutes or even 10 days. It can take weeks to find a bug in a program. So you have to keep on going. But what I really want to cover in this is motivation and giving up. Because I'm going to be honest with you, you should give up sometimes. There is not a point where you just keep trying and nothing works. That's just going to kill the whole idea of bug bounty hunting for you. So in this talk, I'm really going to cover these three big aspects of choosing a target. One is the actual process of choosing a target. One is motivation, and the final one is going to be giving up. And these are really quite interconnected in the sense that, you know, if you can't find a bug, you feel demotivated. You want to move to something else, you give up. And quite a lot of people might give up bug bounties entirely just because they feel demotivated. And I guess really what I want to kind of show in the talk, and I kind of want to prove to you almost, is that there's a right time to give up, there's a wrong time to give up, and motivation is important. So let's start talking about motivation in particular. What is motivation? What motivates us? We often use phrases like, oh, I feel so demotivated, or I feel really unmotivated. But actually, what is motivation? Well, let's start with a question. And you don't actually have to provide an answer with this because this can be quite personal. But I want you to think about this idea of what motivates you. What are the things that you really enjoy, whether it's bug bounty or outside bug bounty, what motivates you? And if you can't find an answer for that question, that's fine. Don't worry if you can't find an answer yet. But I want you to think as I talk about this idea of motivation. I want you to continue thinking about what motivates you. And I want to know if your answer changes, really. So let's talk about my favorite video. This is my favorite video on YouTube. It was filmed on a potato, but it's a very, very good content. And it's an RSA Animate video. So this was a lecture delivered for RSA that was then turned into this animated video and kind of cut into bits. And it's cool. It's by a guy called Dan Pink, and it's called Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. Now, Dan Pink also wrote a book on this, and he's got like a lot of full-length lectures. But I think this is a good way to get into kind of what he was saying. He's quite corporate. He talks about it in terms of like corporate incentives for getting salespeople motivated, that kind of thing. But I actually think it applies really well to the idea of bug bounties. So in case you don't want to watch it, and I understand it's a video that's quite corporate, I'm going to just dilute it for you. So money only works as a motivator to take the issue of money off the table. That is, you get paid enough to pay your rent, your bills, like discretionary spending. Once you have your shiny $2,000 MacBook, you kind of aren't necessarily motivated by money in the same way as when you were saving for that MacBook and you were sitting on Apple's website scrolling and checking out all the configuration options. So that's the first issue. Money doesn't work if you don't need money. And money as a motivator doesn't work when you ask someone to do complex cognitive tasks. So what does that mean? That means tasks that involve creativity. It means tasks that involve multiple skills. It involves getting better at something, all these kind of complex ideas. And wouldn't you know it, bug bounties are often sort of seen as a kind of an easy way to get money. And they're often, a lot of people think they're easy ways to get money. And I'm going to be dead honest with you right now. Money can't be your only motivator for getting into bug bounties. It won't last. I promise you, you will either get your money or like your income to enough of a state where you don't need to make money, or you kind of get to an issue where, you know what, you'd rather get a job, essentially, like a regular 9-to-5 job. So it can't be your only motivation for getting into bug bounties. It's a great reward. It's fantastic because when you spent like 10 hours on something and you get that little bit of like even $500, like a very small amount compared to something that people post on Twitter, it shows that what you found was impactful. It makes you feel valued, makes you feel good. You get all the warm fuzzies and you're like, yeah, I contributed to society. But it's a great reward, a terrible motivator. And it's not only because bug bounties are like hard, right? They're not easy things to do. Like, a lot of people will post on Twitter, oh, I just got $3 million for this bug. And what you don't really see in that is the 3,000 hours it took of hacking to get there. You don't see those man hours, if you like. And bug bounties are hard, but more importantly, they're like cognitively complex. So this is kind of the crux here. Money doesn't work as a motivator. Okay, Katie, I believe you. What does? Please tell me, because I'm getting bored. So these are our 3 good motivators. We have autonomy, mastery, and purpose. What does that mean? Let's talk about autonomy. Not autonomous cars, because that's actually the opposite of autonomy, because it just follows rules. When we mean autonomy, we mean this idea of being autonomous, being able to work on what you want, when you want, how you want, with who you want, as long as you're getting results, right? And this applies much greater to like traditional 9-to-5 jobs or traditional pen testing jobs, where you don't necessarily get to work on what you want or when you want. You have core hours, or how you want. You got methodologies, as long as you're getting results. So maybe this doesn't apply great to bug bounties, but let's take it from kind of a beginner sort of context. And when you're a beginner, you're often asking kind of the top bounty hunters, what's your methodology? How do you do it? And when you follow someone's strict methodology, the way it worked for them, not necessarily for you, but for them, you might not feel motivated because you're kind of stuck to their idea of doing things. You're kind of stuck in this regime, right? You're stuck doing this, and this, then this, then this. But actually, for the most part, bug bounties handle this idea of autonomy really well, because you know what? You can go to any target, right? There might be like different websites have different customers, but apart from that, like, you don't have to just hack on one program. You can work when you want. You don't have to work 9 to 5. You can do whatever you like. You kind of have this quite a lot of autonomy already. So next one is purpose. So the purpose is a feeling of contributing to something greater than yourself. It's not this purpose that is like this, you love it, the world needs it. It's about contributing to something greater. And bug bounty kind of examples of that is like contributing to the safety of the internet. If you use a piece of software already, use an app, use a website, and you can make that safer, that's a great feeling of purpose, of doing something for something greater than yourself. And for some people, it's contribute to the community. Like, I make videos not because I necessarily really enjoy the concept of making videos. I do it because I want to contribute to the community, and that makes me feel good. And that's my purpose, my reason of doing things. Or just leaving your mark. It's that feeling that you didn't just have a 9-to-5 job and you did what you were told and then you went home. You actually did something greater. You left that mark on the security of the internet. So purpose can be all these different things, but fundamentally, it's this contribution of something greater than yourself. So that's autonomy and purpose. Let's talk about mastery. I think mastery is one of the most important ideas for bug bounties. And it's a feeling of getting better at something. So it's not the master, for anybody interested in Doctor Who, not that kind of master. We're talking about getting better at something. It's that incremental improvement. It's the improving your skills. It's the knowing, looking back and going, you know what, 3 weeks ago, I couldn't do that, but now I can. It's that feeling that's like, I'm getting better. I can see improvement. You're learning and executing new techniques. You found a bug class you've not found before. You've maybe watched a ton of videos on whatever idols, and then you've found your first idol. You can see how you've gone from knowing nothing to actually getting there. Maybe you've gone from being, know nothing to a beginner, to intermediate, to advanced. It's that feeling of improvement. And this is something that, we can really lose if we don't find bugs, if we feel like we can't find them. This is the feeling we lose. We lose that feeling of I'm improving. We feel like we're stagnating. So those are the kind of 3 ideas of motivation. And so what does this all tell us? We need all 3. We can't just have even just purpose as a motivator. We can't just sit there and be like, I want to make the internet more secure, because that isn't enough to get us through the 30 hours of learning before we're even in a position to approach a target. And if we lose our drive in one area, we kind of lose our motivation. We lose that drive. So if we don't find any bugs, we don't feel like we're progressing, we lose mastery as a motivator. You don't feel rewarded when you're finding a bug. Maybe you don't get a bounty, you get a duplicate. You don't feel like your contribution was valued. And you kind of lose that purpose as a motivator. And not being able to do your preferred hacking techniques. If you're working on a small scope and you really like to do recon, you can't really work in your preferred way, right? You lose autonomy as a motivator. And some of these we can fix. But some of these are like big picture stuff. And I'm going to be honest with you right now, some of these, you might have to do some soul searching to figure out what the solution is for you. Because this is not a one-size-fits-all problem. It's so many different problems all interwoven. So with all of that, with all of the autonomy, mastery, purpose stuff, I'm going to ask you again, what motivates you? And specifically, I kind of want to know, I can't really see chat, but if you DM me later, has that changed? Like, knowing what kind of the 3 links of motivation are, has it changed how you think about motivation? I'm going to ask you to think on that for a little bit longer. And I really want you to reflect on that when we start to talk about giving up. So now we understand motivation. We can now start to choose our target. So what should our considerations be when choosing a target? So let's start about what we should consider. What's in scope? Should I do a large scope or a small scope? Public or private? How is the team to work with? All of these ideas of, our considerations link back into this idea of motivation, because if we have the right things in scope, we have the right size scope, we're working with a team, we'll then feel more motivated. So choosing a program can be as simple as, just scrolling down and picking the first one you see on a list. But if we can do it more thoughtfully, we'll feel more motivated. And now we know a little bit about motivation. I hope I can convince you here that this is worth considering. So some of the big ideas we might say are play to your strengths. If you already know something, do that. Where you're more or less likely to find bugs. If it's a kind of app you know really well versus one you don't. Where there's less competition. Are we doing mobile because no one's hacking on mobile? The information available, what's in scope, what bugs they're looking for, what kind of impacts they're looking for. If you're a beginner, there's no point approaching a kind of program that wants, your RCEs, because you're just not ready to approach that. And then recon, whether or not you can do recon. A lot of people at the moment are really big on kind of learning recon and more about it and really trying to execute it. But if you pick the wrong kind of program, you can't experience recon and you can't improve your mastery of recon. It's about what's in scope. So you can have a lot of types of assets in scopes. You've got domains like a website or an app, or sometimes it might be just an empty domain. You might have others, so that might be, in this case, this is AWS infrastructure, but that might be leaked credentials. If you really enjoy recon or Google Dorking, or it's something you want to learn, that might be something to consider when you choose a program, looking at something that accepts these other scopes. Android Play Store, sometimes, or like a mobile app, sometimes it's IPA, sometimes APK, sometimes it's test flight. All of these are just app types. If you're interested in learning mobile, if you're interested in, okay, actually, one of the things that really motivates me is finding more bugs and knowing that I can do that, might be, okay, let's then look at mobile because it's something that's rarely tested. We've got source code. Again, if you're a developer maybe coming into bug bounties, that would be something to look at. Or again, skills. You can't just become this expert in bug bounty at this one little thing. You can't just be that guy. You have to be this well-rounded, know a little bit about everything. We've got hardware, IoT, and we have physical devices as well. There's a talk on car hacking. I don't know anything about hardware stuff. I'm very excited to learn about hardware stuff, but also kind of spooked out because cars are like giant metal death machines. So that's our scope, and that's something really to consider when we think about, motivation, is what can we actually hack against. So let's have a chat more about scope. Let's talk about mobile versus web. This is a question I personally get asked a lot. Should I learn mobile hacking or web hacking? Yes, you should learn both. But if you really want to pick something to prioritize, mobile, you're looking at less competition. You can use emulators if you don't have a device. It does require some setup, but that setup is a great barrier for people who, maybe you're a beginner. Maybe you need some good low-hanging fruit bugs. Maybe other people can't be bothered to set up the emulator. Maybe that's free bugs. Or web, where you have like more competition, but you actually have more accessibility, and there's plenty of bugs to find in web. Please don't get me wrong, where I'm like, no bugs in web applications. Sorry, they're all gone. Actually, there's plenty to find there. You just need to know where to look. And again, you need to figure out what you need to learn to be able to approach these targets. Let's talk about bug types and impact. So we kind of have this kind of gap here of technical bugs versus non-technical bugs. And I don't mean that in the sense that, you're a techie or you're not a techie. It's about bugs you feel like you can get. Sometimes if you see the scope, they might only be looking for specific bugs. If you're not ready, in your progression as a bug bounty hunter, to approach an RCE, if you're a beginner, then it's not going to be the right program for you. On the other hand, sometimes RCEs can be quite low in terms of impact, right? Sometimes on the right kind of app, actually IDORs, information disclosure, business logic errors are going to be way more impressive. If you think about industries, healthcare, being able to get information disclosure, huge bug, huge bug. If you think about something with sandboxed applications that's designed to have code run it, RCEs, not a good bug. So depending on sort of what you want to hack, and really, again, we come back to mastery, because I think mastery is so important in bug bounty hunting. As we start to approach mastery, we're then going, okay, what bugs do I want to learn about? Which bugs do I think I can get? Do I need that? If I'm looking at purpose and I want to secure the internet, maybe I want to not focus on bugs that I can't necessarily find. So that's kind of everything about what's in scope, but let's instead talk about size of scope. So when we talk about scope size, we're really talking about things you could hack against, and sometimes this is called attack surface. And when we do recon, we're not actually trying to find bugs, we're actually trying to widen our attack surface and figure out what we can hack against. If you're really into recon, again, looking for a large scope, if you have Stardot, that's really good if you're into recon. But you might think, okay, large attack area, lots of low-hanging bugs. Maybe sometimes there can be, a domain gets forgotten about, but actually smaller scopes can be ignored because people think large scopes are easier. They think recon, I'll just use subdomain enumeration and I'll find like 3 different bugs in 10 minutes and I'll do it all automatically. In terms of what I think is a good scope to approach and a bad scope, I don't think there's a bad size scope to approach. I think we all need to figure out what works for us. Again, we're talking about autonomy. What works for you? What the way you want to work. If you want to find, subdomain enumeration, you should be looking at large scopes. I think a particularly difficult scope, if you're a beginner, can be interwoven scopes. So where you have like one login to multiple products, or like products that all link together in some way, that can be really difficult to approach. So I would say if you're a beginner, try and avoid that particular one. But actually, again, how do you like to work? I can't tell you how you like to work. So let's go public versus private programs. I'm going to be honest, doesn't matter what you pick. Honestly, doesn't matter. Pick whatever works for the way you want to hack. That is autonomy. That's how you stay motivated. You won't stay motivated by jumping ship to every single private program because you think the next one will have more bugs in it. You'll stay motivated when you work the way you want to work. So it doesn't matter what you pick. And you know what? Sometimes people forget that big companies that run public programs have bugs in them. Also, often if they run a public program, they'll have they'll have more write-ups. You can use that to your advantage. So just saying, there's ways to use that to your advantage. And the next thing I really want to talk about, and I think this is really important in bug bounties in particular, because we often deal with the other team. We're often dealing with people who are internal. And something that I personally think is super important is how the team is to work with. And that will give you a purpose motivator. That will make you feel like you're actually contributing something, because somebody will reply after you send in a report. And the best thing you can do here is look for program statistics. The important ones to know are things like average bounty range and CrowdStream, which you can compare against the bounty table, get an idea of what severity bugs are being submitted. You can kind of see, what might be submitted, what's paid really well sometimes, etc., etc. And then vulnerabilities rewarded, known issues. Newer programs might not have any bugs. Or they might have loads because everyone thinks that they're new, I'll hack them immediately. And then we've got validation within X days. So you can see how active the program is, see that they're working and engaging with you, really, because you don't want to submit a bug and then not hear back. That will kill your purpose motivator. And disclosures and stuff like that can be really great. If you're looking at hacking a target, seeing how they interact with people who essentially find bugs for them and do that labor. Are they super standoffish? Are they actually really friendly? It can really give you an insight into this, how teams are to work with you. And maybe if you've been bug hunting for ages, you don't necessarily need like a triager to come and hold your hand and help you out. But just feeling like you've been rewarded and feeling like somebody cares about what you found can be really motivating. Even if it's a duplicate, just being told, thanks, we really appreciate it. Sorry you didn't get a bounty, but actually we really appreciate your work. If the team is understanding and professional, they're really great for beginners as well. They might prompt you for more detailed info if you don't quite explain something correctly. If they're just going to reply back and give you a really kind of, sometimes they can be rude to you or just be like, you don't know what you're talking about. They might not be great for beginners, but having that insight into how they work can be great to see how that will help your motivation. So what should I look for? Let's talk about this checklist. So things you should always look for, no matter what the program is, no matter what you're talking about, a friendly and responsive team. That's your purpose motivator. A large enough scope that you can pivot. It's really easy to lose that mastery, that feeling like you're not getting anywhere. But if you can pivot to a different product, but still use that same knowledge, you can actually feel like you're still progressing, you're still improving, you've still got mastery, you're going through that process. A scope that isn't completely interconnected, so you just don't get lost. You don't get lost in like everything you have to do. A team that's interested in the types of bugs you can find and generate impact with. You really don't, as a beginner, want to be looking at a program that's looking for like really complex bugs, because you're not going to get anywhere. You're just going to feel stuck, essentially. And then an interesting attack surface. It really helps, and specifically for purpose as a motivator, to have an attack app you already use, because you want to secure it. Because at the end of the day, they have your data, and it would be really awful if something were to happen to it, just for you personally. So that's what I think you should always look for when you choose a program. But actually, let's talk about what you can decide. Assets that place your strengths. If you want to do web, obviously. If you want to do mobile, maybe don't pick a web asset, just saying. And then a public or a private program, wherever you're more comfortable with and whatever you think you can approach. And I'm going to add these extra ones here. Does it challenge your skills? Are you getting that feeling of improvement? Is that feeding that mastery? Does it let you hack the way you want to? Do you have the autonomy to do what you want, how you want? And then does it interest you? Don't hack on an app you're not interested in because you don't care what happens to it. Who cares if yet another Bitcoin wallet app loses your data when you don't store bitcoins in it, right? Pick something that interests you. So this is where I join this all together. We talked about motivation and I've talked about choosing a target. And I hope I've convinced you that these two are quite interconnected. And now I want to talk about something that I don't think is talked about enough, for sure. Like, I don't think anybody is really talking about this. When do you give up? A lot of the kind of conventional wisdom in this is never give up, keep trying. The motto, try harder. You know what? Sometimes it's okay to give up. And I'm going to tell you when. When shouldn't you give up? Let's start with that. Don't just give up because it's hard. Bug bounties are hard. I'm not saying that to kind of talk down to you or belittle you. I'm giving you validation. It's hard to find your first bug. It takes a long time to find your first bug. It can take a long time to find your 4,000th bug. It can take a lot of time. It can be really hard to find your 50th bug. It's always going to be hard. It's always going to be taking a long time. It's okay if it does. You don't have to give up if it's just because it's hard and it takes a long time. You also shouldn't give up because you're confused. Like, we all have notebooks everywhere because we all get confused. We all need to take notes. We all need to sit there and scribble furiously how something works. And you shouldn't give up because you don't get a bounty. A lot of people tell me, oh, I found my first bug, there was a duplicate. And it's like, why are you sounding so sad? That's amazing. Well done. Congratulations. You know, if you get a duplicate and you don't get a bounty, that doesn't mean you haven't found a bug. That means somebody found it first. You absolutely found a bug. Congratulations. Well done. I'm sorry you didn't get a bounty. I know that can be demotivating, but you know what? If you come to me and say, Katie, I found my first bug, but it was a duplicate, you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to sit there like this and be like, yeah, you go, rock it. That's amazing. Congratulations. Because that is a bug. And all of this kind of rolls into this. It's just part of bug bounty hunting. You know what? You are not the only person that gets disappointed because you found a duplicate. You're not the only person who gets duplicates. I've got like 30 bugs. I think 20 of them are duplicates. I have so many duplicates. I think anybody who does bug bounties for any considerable period of time has a ton of duplicates. So some affirmations. You write this down, put them next to your bed. You will get dupes. 100% you will get them. It's a fact of life. I'm sorry, it sucks. But just because you lose perhaps money as a motivator doesn't mean you haven't gotten better. That mastery doesn't mean your contribution to the community wasn't useful, your purpose. And it doesn't mean that you didn't get to hack the way you want. You still have that motivation. Just keep going. You will always get confused and stuck. It happens to the best of us, right? And the reason why the top bounty hunters tend to get over this sooner is because all they do is they go ask their friends and then somebody else comes up with an idea. Bug bounty is collaborative, right? If you get confused and stuck, even if you're a beginner, join Discords like the Bugcrowd Discord, go, hey, can anyone give me some help, right? Involve yourself in that community, make those connections, and then use other people's brains. It's like offloading power. It's like, AWS, why buy your own server? You just borrow somebody else's. Bug hunting is hard. It takes ages to find a bug. It does. It really, sometimes you might find a bug in 5 minutes. I've done that. I found a bug in 5 minutes and that was amazing. That's not the normal. That is very much not normal. You will spend weeks on some projects, right? You might end up, looking at this massive application and you spend 3 weeks looking at it and you don't find anything. And that just happens. It happens to everybody. And feeling like that, having those experiences, don't make you a failure. And it doesn't mean you should give up. You are still valid and welcome in this community, even if you feel like you don't belong. So now I've hopefully convinced you not to give up so quickly. I'm going to tell you when you should give up. And first I'm going to talk about types of giving up. So giving up forever versus giving up for a little bit. When should you just call it quits on a target and just go, you know what? I've tried my best. It's not happening. And when should you just take your computer, close your computer, walk away for an hour, and then come back? So I'm first going to talk about giving up forever. So when should you give up? When should you give up on a target? When should you give up on a bug? When your loss of motivation is directly linked to the program you're hacking on, the bug bounty platform, or the bug bounties themselves. So if you've found that actually that target isn't allowing you to hack the way you want, maybe you need a VPN, right? And you don't necessarily want to be bothered with all the setup. Maybe it only has mobile apps, and you know what? You can't be bothered today. That's fine. Give up. So I'm just going to do a bit of a recap. Mastery, getting better at something. Purpose, feeling like contributing something greater than yourself. Autonomy, doing things the way you want. Those are our kind of core ideas. Because now I'm going to tell you how to regain your motivation if you lose one of these. Talk about mastery. So I'm really big on goal setting. Really big on goal setting. It is the best way to keep mastery as a motivator and to keep going and to keep working even though it's hard. So when we make goals, you should make smart goals. And this is coming across very much like I'm in university and I'm teaching you study skills. But I promise it's important. So when we talk about smart goals or smart objectives, we talk about goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely, and sometimes time bound. So specific. What makes a goal specific? It means you can define it well. Bad would be, I want to learn about XSS. What do you want to learn about it? Do you want to learn about how it works, how to write a good exploit for it? Do you want to know the bypasses? There's so many ideas that get interwoven. And you might say, my goal is just to learn about XSS. Okay, split it up. Make those goals as specific as possible. You want to learn about XSS? Do you want to learn about XSS bypasses? That's your goal. Do you want to learn about how to write an exploit that uses an IDOR, for example? That's your goal. Your goal isn't to learn about it, it's to break it down. Then we have measurable. Now, mastery is the feeling of getting better at something. If you have a goal and you don't feel like you're improving, how on earth can you feel like you have mastery as a motivator? So then we talk about something being measurable. Like your goal shouldn't be, to take my example, to learn about XSS bypasses. Maybe it's to, okay, I want to be able to put a bypass on this, or maybe it's to work through some lab exercises, whatever. That idea where you could have a checkbox and tick them off. Achievable. Don't pick a goal you can't reach. Don't have a goal, get an RCE when you've been bug hunting for 5 days. It's not going to happen yet. That's your long-term goal. So then realistic and timely kind of come together. So what do you mean to be realistic? If you set yourself a time-bound goal of, I want to learn how to pop an XSS in 3 weeks. Can you actually do that in 3 weeks would be the kind of realistic element of that. And timely just means, time bound. Don't just let your goals sit there on your notebook forever, on a post-it note stuck to your monitor. I'll get round to it eventually. No, you get round to it now and you just get started. So the best way to regain your mastery is to get control of these ideas of goals. You should have long-term goals and short-term goals. I actually have an entire video on goal setting and how to stay motivated with goals. I recommend watching that one for far more in-depth information about it. Loss of purpose as a motivator. Ooh, okay. Now, mastery is quite easy to explain how to get it back because it is goal setting. Purpose can involve soul searching. And one thing I recommend that everybody does is engage in a period of self-reflection. Every week, every day, think about how you feel. Like, how do you feel about what you've accomplished? What do you want to do next? Really engage in that self-reflection like process, and you'll understand what purpose as a motivator means to you. That could mean for you feeling like you want to make the internet more secure, right? So if you want to do that, that's really something you need to search for. In terms of like small ideas, like working with a program, that might be checking that they actually appreciate you and that they want to engage with you. And that can be something that's easily Googleable, but actually self-reflection can be the best way to regain some of this. And I can't tell you what the answer is because it will be so unique to you. You just need to figure it out for yourself. So first one, very actionable. This one, bit wishy-washy, look into the distance, have a bit of a think, put your thinking cap on and have a good time talking to yourself. So let's talk about autonomy. If you lose your autonomy, just leave. If you can't work the way you want to work, what's the point, right? You're working on a target that is designed for people who really like recon and you don't enjoy recon, it's not something you want to learn, just jump ship. If you're looking at bugs you don't feel like you could pop, and it's once again not part of your kind of plan for your learning and your mastery, there's no point doing something if you don't like it. Really obvious advice, but if you really do feel like you've lost your autonomy, just jump ship. And you might be thinking, Katie, these all sound rather interconnected. And if you were thinking that, you'd be correct. Oftentimes, our motivation is so linked together, we can't necessarily know how we feel. And again, I'd really recommend engaging in self-reflection. You don't need to write it down. You don't need to tell anyone. Just put a part of your day. Maybe it's the end of the day. Maybe it's the end of the week on a Friday. And just think about you. How are you progressing in your goals? How are you working towards where you want to be in life? And sometimes you might not have an answer, or you might have a negative answer that goes, I don't know. That's fine. Engaging in that process of self-reflection and continually doing it will help you to understand these motivation factors better. So I'm going to talk about giving up for a little bit. And the idea of this is giving up and coming back to something, being the motivation boomerang. And sometimes it's as simple as literally you spend all day on something, your brain is completely fried, it's full of mush. You get off of your computer, walk away from the computer, don't go near the computer, go have a shower, go do something else, take a break, go have some dinner, whatever, and then come back to it. Give your brain a rest. Because I guarantee as you're sitting in the shower, feeling the water kind of come down, you'll figure out the exploit, right? You'll figure out how to do it. It's okay to take a break to something and come back to it later. These are roadblocks. But you should have a plan to resolve these roadblocks. You know, even if that's just literally, you don't have to write it down, just having an idea of what the roadblock is and how to overcome it. So why should you give up? A bug or target on a program is beyond your skill level. That's fine to just finish with that target and move on to something else. But you should know, what you need to learn. What does that tell you about your skills? That will help you set goals because you'll know what you need to learn next and what you want to learn next. So why give up? You don't have the time to commit to a program or bug right now. A lot of people have hobbies that don't involve the computer. They have work. They might have a family. They might have childcare. They might want to just do literally anything else. And a lot of the time it can be tempting to just go, I'll just stop sleeping, or I'll just have a really quick dinner. It's fine to not have time. You can take a break. I'm going to give you permission. I'll write you a permission slip if you would like. And it will say, yes, you can take a break. Don't worry. But you should know when you will have time and plan out what you want to do next. Actually, it can be really useful to kind of recap to yourself, okay, here's everything I know about target, and here's how I want to know more about target. So why give up? You need some time to think about something. You know, I'm sure I'm not the only one who has gone to do something else and then had an idea about how to exploit something or find something. One time I was making a video. I think it was it the business logic video? I can't remember which video it was. I was making a video, writing up the slides, and I had this epiphany when I was reading one of the example reports. I was like, I know how to exploit that bug, and I checked it wasn't accepting submissions anymore. So this happens. Sometimes you just need to let a bug sit with you. Just keep thinking about it. Just let your brain process other things, and then something will inspire it. So why give up? You need a break. There is no problem with taking a break from bug bounties. We talk about burnout a lot in this community. And a lot of people feel extremely burnt out. It's okay to take a break. Do take a break. You know what? You're not getting any joy from bug bounties. Just don't do them for a while. Do something else as a hobby. Maybe, if you do feel like you want to keep improving, maybe pick up developing, for example, pick up something related. Right. So it's okay to give up. No, seriously. It really is okay to give up. But you should know and understand why you want to give up and explore why you do. Is it the motivation because of this idea of mastery, purpose, or autonomy? Is it because it's a temporary roadblock? How are you going to deal with that? And when should you stick with it? Bug bounty is not as easy as Twitter would make it out to be. But I'm going to be honest, it feels really, really, really good. It is amazing. It is the best high you will ever experience. It feels so, so good. So if this lack of motivation and soul searching doesn't really apply to you, don't give up too soon and just stick with it. Just keep going, because sometimes you do need to try harder. So I want to leave you with some further reading and then a final thought. So here are two of things that I've watched and read recently. One of them is this article by Vicky Lee talking about while you fail at bug bounties. Use some good inspiration. Watch that. Read that. And then the other one is Stokes' video on mental hacking for better bounties, which is amazing because he uses Post-it notes, and I love Post-it notes. And there was something very satisfying about seeing Post-it notes being slapped on a board that just appealed to me. And again, that's talking about kind of the same ideas, and there's quite a lot of mental aspects to hacking that don't necessarily get explored the way they should. So to end, my final thought, you dear viewer, dear listener, you are not a hacking machine, okay? You are a human. You can act like a human. It's okay. You don't need to be getting bugs all the time, working constantly, even though you hate it, trying harder. You're a human. Treat yourself like one. Just take that time to figure out what the human side of you needs. So that is the end of my slideshow. Thank you very much for listening to me. I hope you found this useful, engaging, another presumably positive word, and I'm quite happy to do questions.
That was so awesome, Katie. I'm a huge fan of the soft approach to such a technical and mind-driven thing that bounties are for us. It's a extremely competitive space, and the way that you broke down all the questions that's been going through my mind and a lot of other people's in such an easy, digestible way was super, super, super cool. And I've had those lying at bed, not being able to, or you're just waking up and realizing that, holy shit, what's going on? Or that epiphany in the shower moment when you're like, oh my God, I just got it. So I think we got a couple of questions for you, and I'm just going to fire one of them straight out of it. So
yeah, go for it. I'm ready.
Okay. So how long did it take? How long did it take for you to find your first bug? And was that a dupe?
So my first bug was not a dupe, but I do have a story around it. So I'm very fortunate that when I started bug bounties, they weren't something new to me. I have some friends in the community already. So one of my friends who knew at university, I was very active in the community aspect. Like I used to run a computing society and I used to run mentoring sessions and all this kind of thing. And he was like, Katie, there's an event in London. This link is going around some groups, apply. And I was like, no. I turned down mentoring at a live hacking event to begin with. And then I was like, you know what? He kept bothering me. I was like, yeah, fine, I'll do it, whatever. I didn't really understand what I had, like, a lot of people are really hyped about them. I'm just sitting there like, yeah, I guess I'll have a go. I wasn't expecting to find my first bug. I was really fortunate that I had access to some of the best hackers who, when I found like something interesting, they're able to go, here's the exploit. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take this like weird thing I found. It was really just a request that looked weird. And I'll show you how to do an exploit and I'll teach you it. So I got some help in that. And we'd gotten to a point where we couldn't exploit it anymore, but the event was ending. So we called over the customer representative and we're like, so is this a bug? Because at this point, I'd never found a bug before. I'd been doing it for like 5 hours. I really didn't know what I was doing. And the customer was like, I thought we fixed that one, which gave me a great kind of, yes, I found something. It was an incredible feeling for the first time. I was very fortunate. My experience is not what everybody else gets, and that's part of the reason why I like to make videos, because not everybody has access to like the mentoring that I was able to get access to. And something I found during my mentoring session, the person who organized it was like, you know, I want you as mentees to be able to mentor new hackers, and that's something that I think I've kept really dear to my heart in making my videos, interacting with my audience, answering questions. That part of your job as a hacker is to help new hackers. Like they helped me. I want to help. So I hope I think that answers the question.
That's so good. The idea of like being able to learn to the point where you're able to pass it on, not just where you're able to use it, and actually having that be part of your goal as you learn. Just good things happen when you apply that kind of principle, I think, in general, but especially here. That's really cool.
I think what really helped my YouTube channel, like, I don't want to say take off, because it didn't really, like, I don't have millions of subscribers and millions of views, but I think something that makes my YouTube channel kind of unique in another way is I'm not an expert. You know, when I made my video on RCEs, I didn't actually know that much about making RCEs. I can sit in the position of being a beginner because I am one. You know, I don't know everything. I'm not an expert. And that really helps for me to understand coming into it what a beginner's going to struggle with. So I made videos like really early when I'd been hacking for only a few months. But because I knew what it was like to be a beginner, I knew what people struggled with, I knew the type of content that needed to be out there for people.
Yeah, but I'm doing the same thing. That's what I've been doing since day one. You know, I stumbled into this. Like, I was vlogging and having drinks. I was like, and somebody said, like, "Have you seen Burp?" I'm like, "Who's Burp?" And then eventually from there, it just, oh yeah, I became this bounty guy.
What even is this Burp thing? What is a Burp?
Who is Larry Lau?
Hey, just on yeah. What is off? We gotcha. Katie, there's just on that with your YouTube stream, there's a couple of people that have just asked for a reminder on what your channel is, so that, you know, we can be ringing the bell. I want to make sure that you get a couple of opportunities to be calling that out as well.
I'm quite proud because now you can search Insider PhD, Insider as in not inside A. I really need to figure out a better way of saying that. Insider PhD. Actually, I have it on my little whiteboard here.
Depends if it's an American audience, it'd have to be Insider PhD.
That's true, yeah. But you can look up Katie, and then I understand if you write Insider PHP, my name also comes up now. So PhD as in the thing you get like a doctorate, because that's
another place you can find. You can connect and find Katie's channels on the Level Up website. So if you go to levelup.sh, I think everyone's pretty familiar with that, and you'll at least find a Twitter there, and from there you can like do some OSINT to find a YouTube.
Good call out.
Scavenger hunt.
One thing I'd love to hear more from you about too, like I love this era that we're moving into with hacking, where people are very openly talking about mental health and things like that. I feel like for years in OSCP, we've talked really well about that context switch and the need. If you do the OSCP, you've got to take the break, but not so much elsewhere. You're right. People hinge on, you've got to focus, you got to deep dive. The other element to that, I think, is like, how do you recognize burnouts creeping in, and how do you decide it's time to take a break? Like, what are your kind of cues to yourself where you go, you know what, I just need to take a break. This is hitting that point.
So I think what hits me first, so I do a PhD, it's my day job. A PhD is the ultimate version of burnout, because with research and doing a PhD, you can spend ages doing research. You can sit there and fine tune an algorithm to the inch of its life. You can chase 0.01% better performance. And you can really, and academia in general, academia rant, can really struggles with burnout. And I think coming from an environment where burnout is talked about a lot, like when we talk about students, we talk about burnout tons. Academia is full of burnout questions. You ever seen academic Twitter? It's full of people burning out. How do you recognize burnout? This is what's probably the most important thing, and it sounds really wishy-washy, I'm really sorry, is knowing yourself. Like for me, I know I'm experiencing burnout when I look in my email inbox and I see new invites to private programs and I feel nothing towards them. I just feel meh. I don't care, whatever, and just let them expire. That's when I know that I'm burnt out. How you can recognize it in yourself is that you just have to learn what it means to be for you. I'm very fortunate. One of the ways I beat burnout is that I do a lot of crafting. Anyone who kind of follows me know I wear Lucky Socks. And in case you're wondering, in case it's come out,
I've seen them.
I'm wearing Lucky Socks right now. So if you ask me how my talk went so well, it's the Lucky Socks. It's always Lucky Socks. So I knit in my free time. And that really helps me. Making something with my hands, for me personally, not necessarily for you, but for me, making something with my hands, when we use computers, it feels very virtual. You know, you can't take your computer, take it to your mum and go, look at what I made, because my mum doesn't care. My mum has complete indifference to what I've made on the computer. But if I show her something I've made like in real life with crafting, people understand that it feels less ephemeral. And to me, that also feels more real, and that really helps keep me motivated. I don't know if it works for you. You can learn to knit and crochet. It's fun. Spent all my bounties on knitting supplies, not even joking.
That's awesome. I got a question from the chat here, and I'm going to see if I'm able to just get that out right. So bear with me, though. The question is from Yakuch, and a large enough scope / a scope that isn't interconnected. Could you elaborate on that with an example, if it's possible?
So a really interconnected scope is one where you might have one login for multiple products and products that interlink with each other. Let's say you're working with a platform that handles a lot of data. You might have a app that just handles ingesting all the data into the app. You might have another app which just visualizes it as a spreadsheet, another one that makes graphs. So when you start to deal with those scopes that are ever so slightly interconnected and interwoven, it can be really difficult to follow the flow of what an application is doing. Because for that might be quite simple. You do this, then you do this, then you do this. But actually for some of them, it can be way more complex than that. You can deal with, you ingest data, and then step 2 might be, then you can do some machine learning, or step 2 might be, and then you can visualize it, and then you can do ... So when I say interconnected scope, interwoven scope, I'm talking about those apps that just contain everything. Like Google does. You have one login to Google. Google Drive connects to your Gmail, connects to your calendar. That kind of scope can be really difficult to approach. And when I say large enough scope, I mean a scope where you can pivot. So you might have something like Google where every product is quite interconnected, or you might have something where, you have, I don't know, a single app, another single app, and another single app, but actually they're in the same scope. So you can kind of learn a bit about what the developers are doing from one app and transfer that knowledge to the other one. So you might be able to kind of follow their thought process a little bit. That's what I mean when I say those two things.
That's awesome. Hey, Katie, I got a question for you. Just on the machine learning and artificial intelligence and all things singularity and cyber and the goodness that you've been wading in throughout your PhD. There's a common question that I think comes up, especially for folk that are newer in offensive cybersecurity or bounty hunting. It's like, is AI going to take my job? Are we going to end up in a position where like the kind of things that we can deliver as value as individuals and even as an industry are going to be replaced by computers? And you kind of lead off into whatever you want to talk about on the ML side as well, but that specific one for the audience, I think, is a really interesting one to riff on.
Okay, cool. This is a question that I get asked a lot, actually, because my background is data science, which is really, it's machine learning plus statistics plus data visualization plus, answering big questions. And to put it into perspective, AI can really only be used to answer questions of data. That sounds kind of weird. So what that might be in terms of something more real is if you run a bug bounty program, AI will tell you what is the bug we are most likely to find. What is the product that may contain the most bugs? From a bug hunting side, you might want to say, okay, what are the indicators? And then you go, okay, great. We have our question. We know our method, machine learning. We need our data. There are no data sources for bug bounty. So you need a lot of data to do machine learning. You need so much data. Now, if you're perhaps running a program and you get, thousands of reports, you might be able to answer that question when it revolves around what bugs are we likely to find. If you're on the other side, you can't really have the data to access it. A lot of the times, those kind of active scanners, they use pattern recognition. So they're looking for they're basically going through a list and going, does it have this? It might be vulnerable to that, etc., etc. So on that side, you've got these kind of rule-based, if you like, approaches to the problem. On the other side, you have AI, and AI needs data, and there is no data.
Yeah.
Don't worry about them taking your jobs because they don't have the data to be able to do it. That's their weakness. That's Skynet's weakness. If you take away the data, they can't steal your job.
That's if you exclude Twitter, trying to teach us what news is and isn't. But yes, otherwise I broadly completely agree with what you say.
I think people shouldn't be so worried.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. And that was a great answer. Follow-on question to that, researchers, hackers, people that are in cybersecurity that are wanting, because from my perspective, I think you and I actually had a Twitter exchange on this the other day. It's like AI means that there's more to hack. In terms of actually learning how to think about machine learning and AI as an opportunity to differentiate as a bounty hunter. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh my God, I have many thoughts on this. So what
sure.
makes machine learning kind of interesting is, as like talking from a bounty perspective, is that there are a lot of bugs that just haven't been explored completely. I said before that machine learning relies on a lot of data. If you give it a lot more data, you can trick it, essentially. And that might have a lot of security impact. If you can give false data, you can produce false results, which can then go into, have a marketing board meeting, and that can really damage a company's reputation. And that's a type of security impact. So if you want to learn more, and there's definitely stuff to learn, there's so much to learn, especially because data science doesn't necessarily get the same scrutiny as developers do yet. Yeah. We get away with a lot more. But if you want to learn it, I really recommend Data Camp. So Data Camp is it's the Pen Tester Lab Pro for data science. Practical exercises that get you working with the algorithms, that get you understanding the results and actually teaching you how to interpret results. If you're interested in machine learning, I highly recommend doing that. Although, plug, I'm going to be doing some videos on it because I think it's interesting and it's my YouTube channel and I can do what I want.